All right, we'll get started, and we might get y'all out of here at least 30, 45 seconds early if we get through our hammer through this PowerPoint. Thank y'all for joining our session. I know you had a plethora of sessions you could have gone to. I think a whole 4 others you could have picked from, and you chosen to be with Joshua and I this morning. Joshua will jump in on some of our slides later on in the presentation, but I want to go ahead and let you know this man is a former Einstein Fellow and prolific author. So if you want to, I'll let him talk about his books towards the end of the presentation, but you are in for a treat getting to hear from Joshua. Not so much me, but definitely Josh, and want to welcome our online audience that's out there. Brandon, who's helping us in the back. Thank you, Brandon. Said that there's a virtual group joining us, and so if you ask a question, I'll repeat it into the microphone because that's the only way our online audience will hear. My name is Jared Bigham. I am the Senior Advisor on Workforce and Rural Initiatives for the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce. I'm a former middle school science teacher, elementary principal, high school principal, worked in the district office about 5 minutes, worked at the state level for about 10 minutes, worked with an organization called Tennessee SCORE for at least 20 minutes in policy and advocacy, and done a lot of workforce development projects across Tennessee. Anybody from Chattanooga here? I know we got Olivia here. So Chattanooga 2.0 was my baby back in the day. I helped birth 2.0, so I'm very, I don't know if you'd say, I guess I'm very proud of it, but I'm also very jealous of that work that's going on in Chattanooga and wish that it could be replicated in other parts of the state. And I want to tell you, I am not a good podium speaker. I'm a walker. I like to walk around, so I may just end up sitting beside somebody as we work through this PowerPoint. But STEM, when I was a teacher, I was STEM to me 20 years ago as a middle school science teacher in Polk County, Tennessee. How many people know Polk County? Okay. How many people know Turtletown, the metropolis of Turtletown? All right, I live in Turtletown. My wife's an assistant principal in Cleveland. We got 5 kids, so public education is very near and dear to my family's heart. My daddy was a principal. My grandma was a teacher. My great-grandma was a one-room schoolhouse teacher, so we're like the education mafia in my family. But I will say, when I started teaching 20 years ago, a couple of things. One, nobody told me about standards. I didn't even know that you remember the blue books? Those that had been in education for a while, they give us these blue books. Well, nobody even gave me a blue book for the first couple of years that I taught. So I just taught what I thought would be fun. And I didn't realize I was doing STEM as a middle school science teacher. We did all kinds of fun projects. Has anyone done the CO2 cars where you build the CO2 cars, you put the little cartridge in the back and you race them across the gym? Anybody done? Okay, there's a couple people. So if you're not familiar with this, it's little wooden cars that students design. They try to get them aerodynamic, and they look at like wind speed against the car and friction and all these different other the laws of motion. I just thought it was cool that I could bring my bandsaw into my classroom and we would cut blocks of wood out and have kids sand for like a week. You talk about keeping some middle schoolers occupied, just have them sand a block of wood this big, hour and a half every day. So we had this competition. I told my students that I'm going to make a car too, and at the end of the week we're going to race. We're going to have a competition. It's going to be just head-to-head elimination through the whole middle school until we get down to 1 or 2 champions, and then I'm going to race in those final heats. And if anybody can beat my car, I'll let y'all have the next week off. Like, it'll be a fun day every day in Coach Bigham's class. You won't have to do any work, no homework, and not even worksheets. So they're all fired up. They spent hours and hours, cheated. A lot of them cheated, took their cars home and had their daddies, who were engineers, try to help them, all that stuff. but I cheated better. The CO2 canisters that would go in those cars were typically 4 grams of CO2. That's what you would put in. What they didn't ever see is that in my pocket, I had 8-gram canisters that I would pull out, and when it was my car's turn to race against somebody, I had double the amount of CO2 that was propelling my car. So I devastated all competition. So that was one of my first, I guess, as a teacher, introduction to a STEM type project. The second STEM type project was hot air balloons. Has anyone made a hot air balloon in your classroom before? Did you even know that's possible? See, make it out of tissue paper. You've never seen hot air balloons really as a practical project for students until you've gotten a bunch of tissue paper like you wrap presents with, and you can use glue sticks and cut them out and do all that stuff, and you can make hot air balloons that are about this big, and you can get a burner, a launching burner that you put the hot air balloon over the top of it, and it'll fill it with hot air, and it'll rise up into the sky. So we had a competition with that. Also, who could get the hot air balloon to stay in the air the longest? Who would construct, which team would construct? So I had them in teams of 4. So the whole middle school were out there. We're on the football field. We're having this competition, and man, I'm so proud of myself because I'm thinking all these veteran teachers are looking at me and they're like, yeah, that's why the kids like Coach Bigham, because he does fun, cool stuff. He does these projects. I was feeling very proud of myself in the moment. And this one team, they just excelled above the others, and they built a hot air balloon. It went up. They were typically staying up in the air like a minute and a half before they would slowly come back down. But this one was like 3 minutes, still going. And I will say the air currents helped it. It helped it off the football field, and it kept going across the parking lot in front of the gym. It went right up to a power line and to a transformer. Just like if we'd pointed, we couldn't have pointed that hot air balloon any better to that transformer. Hit it, flip the breaker on the transformer or whatever the thing is up there. Power's gone to the whole campus. So I went from being full of myself to like, who can I blame? I'm like blaming the first place team. Like, somebody go tell the principal that John, Brittany, and Mike just shut down the power in the school. So all that to say that STEM has been around a long time, whether it was labeled that or not. And I feel like as part of our, not just our education programs we got in schools, but really workforce development with the landscape that we have today and the job opportunities we have out there, that it's going to be critical to meeting those workforce needs as a state, as a country. And one thing that gets on my nerves, y'all probably heard this, and you got some school board members will say, we got to get some of them vocational classes back in there in the school. There's jobs out there with them if you can get them kids in vocational classes. They still don't know it's CTE. They don't use the word STEM. But the STEM jobs are truly is what driving our economy in this state right now. So we're going to talk about one of the biggest opportunities in a sector, which is the computer science sector. And we're going to talk about what is actually driving some of this in our state and the reason behind it. So you look at the U.S. Department of Labor, there's over 500,000 jobs unfilled in the country, in the United States alone, by 2026, that we don't know how we're going to account for those. It's not that they're just going to be out there. We literally don't know how we're going to fill over 500,000 jobs in our country in the computer science sector. In our state right now, today, we've got a little over 4,000 jobs in the computer science sector that we can't fill. And these are great paying jobs. They're living wage careers. That's what people talk to me about jobs with kids all the time. We got somebody from Collierville here, and one of the guys we were talking about from West Tennessee, Joe T. Wood, he always used to tell me for a decade, we can get kids jobs. That's easy. We can send them to McDonald's, we can send them to Hardee's, wherever. We can get them a job. What we need to do for kids is get them a living wage career. And this is one of those sectors in computer science where there's a blue billion different opportunities and pathways you could take with different levels of education. You don't have to have a 4-year degree to access some of these jobs. Some of those vocational jobs that the school board members and other stakeholders talk about, students can access those jobs with either a 2-year associate's or a TCAT credential. And honestly, when you look at the earning power of a TCAT credential compared to a BS degree, there's more earning potential in several of those jobs in the computer science sector than if you went and got just a full-blown computer science degree, a BS in computer science. If you're in CTE sector or STEM sectors, you probably know that when we look at those opportunities that are out there, the salaries are pretty crazy when you think about the level of education that you have to attain to access these. This is all these jobs, these career paths are 4 years or less. Half of them are either an associate's or a TCAT credential. And you look at, let me see if I can make this little thing work. Look at this, IT project manager, systems architect, computer hardware engineer. We got kids that are doing some of this stuff right now in their high schools just, because they have those skills that they have either self-taught or by growing up in a feeder pattern that emphasizes computer science, they've had opportunities to learn. I had a boy, when I was a principal, I called him Cookie. Anybody remember the commercial for the pest control company? Looky, 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 here comes Cookie, Cook's Pest Control. Well, I called him Cookie because he would always get the bugs out of my computer. And I finally started giving Cookie a free period or a study hall period so he could fix the computers in our school. Because he knew more than our computer teacher did. He knew more than our system IT guy did. So there's, if I was relying on our IT guy that was 35 miles away, I might get it fixed a week later. I could go get Cookie and say, all right, get out of English. I need you to come fix our network. Network's down again. So these jobs, we're not talking about having to have be a rocket scientist. We're talking about an affinity for technology and then some additional training to be able to access these careers. So I want to ask you, as folks that are living this, either at the elementary, middle, or high school level, you're living the STEM life, the STEM education life, what opportunities do you see there or challenges that you see for your students in accessing these opportunities? Yes, ma'am.
I teach 8th grade STEM, 7th, 8th grade in middle school, and a lot of the students, when we do like STEM career research and stuff, and they find computer programming and IT techs and all of that, their misconception is you have to go through a 4 years of college in order to get a job in that. When in reality, if you can get a certified program, which through TCAT, like for anywhere between 12 to 16 or 18 months, you can actually get a job making more money than we make after going through a 4-year college and being in debt with school loans. So they don't understand that you don't necessarily have to do another 4 years after high school.
Yeah, so for our online attendees, the comment was made that students don't realize they don't necessarily have to get a 4-year degree to access some of these great career paths. They can go through TCAT and get the training they need to access some really good jobs. And you're absolutely right. So the career awareness component, which we're going to talk a lot about that in this session today, and we're going to talk about some free resources for Tennessee teachers to help students in that career exploration. That's really what this session's about, honestly. It's if we had to boil it down, it's about career exploration in STEM fields in particular. But yeah, you're right. That's a great comment.
One of the things we have trouble with is qualified teachers. So, people that are in this field are making $150,000, $200,000 a year, and they don't want to leave those fields to come make $50,000, $60,000 to train
Yeah, absolutely. So the comment was that if you're making 100,000+ a year in a career as in computer science, why would you come to a school to work for $60,000? And you're absolutely right. And that's not just isolated computer science. We see this all over the state in things like industrial maintenance. Industrial maintenance. If you got a kid that's good with their hands, likes to fix things and work on things, that's the path I would steer many of those students, because right now there's companies within commuting distance of every single community in Tennessee that needs to hire industrial maintenance folks. Like Tyson Chicken in West Tennessee, I talked to their HR person. They could hire 100 industrial maintenance folks tomorrow. And literally with the TCAT there and the community college in Jackson and in that and even in Humboldt, they got a TCAT satellite office. If they tripled the number of industrial maintenance graduates from that program, they still couldn't meet Tyson's needs alone, much less the region's needs. So that's in the same thing, computer science. We could triple the number of graduates in a region in computer science pathway and still not meet the needs, which you talk about flexibility for your students being able to work remotely, not just in Tennessee. I mean, obviously we want to fill Tennessee jobs, but they can get literally a job anywhere in the world with many of the credentials we offer at our TCATs and community colleges alone. Yes, ma'am.
I have difficulty finding resources for like middle school age where you're trying to kind of give them more advanced but that are still engaging. Some of the more like the free resources online are really good at gamifying like block coding, but then as you get more advanced, it becomes less engaging for the students, so they kind of check out. So like more of a, I guess, advanced concept, we need something that is still engaging for a 12, 13-year-old.
Yeah. So the comment for our online attendees was that the content and programs that are more engaging for middle school age students, that it's not just you're checking the box kind of worksheet kind of stuff and things like that. I mean, make it more engaging so they would be interested in the content. And what you need to do is just put some duct tape on the back of your head, because we're about to blow your mind with what we're going to show you today, in particular what Josh is going to talk about to address that specific issue. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I thought that there would be a challenge. I know we mentioned that some of the, people who are working in those fields are six-figure salaries and don't want to become teachers. But in my previous breakout or previous session, he talked about community partnership. And so those, people in that position, just getting them to come into the classroom and donating their time for those students who are going to be advanced in some of those fields. So I just thought that was a really good idea.
Yeah, so comment was that community partnerships to help with those training deficits and getting instructors in the classroom. And I rabbit trailed and didn't address what the original question that you asked about, how do you get somebody to leave a job where they're making 100,000+ to be a teacher? And that's one area that I feel like we should supplement those instructors, just like we supplement coaches. I'm an old basketball and football coach, and I think why are we not supplementing instructors to incentivize them to leave a particular sector, or even do it part-time? I mean, that's a great idea. Do it part-time. And I know that some of the companies, they're doing that more so that because they are so desperate for workers that they're willing to let some of their people go into the high schools or the TCATs or the community colleges and be part-time instructors just to help with the talent pipeline. And I know, Olivia, with the Future Ready Institutes in Chattanooga, I know that's something y'all do. If you want to speak to that.
Where we struggle is the licensing and endorsement side of that. So we need help advocating with the state of Tennessee in making it
Yeah. So that's a great point. That we need more flexibility in licensing teachers, especially in CTE. I mean, to me, that's something in a way it should be a no-brainer because we're getting people to leave jobs making six figures. And unfortunately, I see this all across the state. What you end up with is somebody that really wasn't too good at their job in the industry, and so they come back to teach because they can't get hired in outside the K-12 system, and that's unfortunate that where we should be getting the best of the best, we're getting the dregs sometimes.
So one thing we're having to do, and I'm actually in Putnam County, I just work with probably this, because one thing we've had to do is we actually had to farm it out to TCAT, because those people who don't have licensure, TCAT can take them and they can be our teachers, but they can't come into our system and be our, and then we run into problems if we're having to farm that out, people quitting and stuff like that, so. And it's still enrollment at that point. Yes, and it's still enrollment at that point.
We still need teachers for those level 1 and 2
Yes,
classes.
yeah, and,
Yeah.
you know, so that's what we're having to do, and it's, you know, it would make it a lot easier if we could transition those guys in.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think that's where we as a constituency could advocate for the Department of Ed to give us more flexibility in that area. Yes, sir.
So I think one of the things when you think about students is demystifying or making it less nebulous that, hey, this is a career in STEM or computer science. We use those terms like STEM, whatever it is, right? We categorize lots of things in that. You showed a list, and like specializing is really, not something you want to do in high school, but it's definitely a track that you want to get them on, or at least give them experience in. So I think in terms of students and making things a little more understandable, as well as parents and counselors, those are two big pieces.
Yeah, so comment for our online folks was that we need to help students demystify some of those, the jargon we use, and eventually focus in some of those areas and make parents aware of what's out there. That's the other part, is when you talk to parents, they still, when they hear a tech type job, they're thinking vocational. That's what they think, and there's a stigma tied to a lot of those careers when we know that those kids are going to be making a lot more money than any of their teachers if we can get them in that sector. All right, so real quick, there's a couple of examples, and they're from the Chattanooga area, Olivia. So any other Chattanooga folks with us here? I mean, there's some. Okay, awesome. So a couple of things that the industry has done to try to help meet that workforce gap is one's the Blue Sky Academy, and that's Blue Cross Blue Shield has such a deficit and need in IT people. And that is something I didn't know till I was working in Chattanooga, is that when I hear Blue Cross Blue Shield, I think somebody's filing insurance claims. That's all they're doing. Is you got people in the room doing that all day. When it's really, in Chattanooga alone, they got about 1,200 IT specialists that keep Blue Cross up and running. And so to meet that need, they're incentivizing high school students, recruiting students out of high school to enter an accelerated program where they can get a BS in computer science in 3 years. I think it's 2 years, 3 years, and get them into a job paying $70,000+ with 3 years of education. And I know there's, on recruitment side, there's been a focus on students in low-income families and some of the feeder patterns that where you would think that a computer science program, why would we focus on computer science? And because the students don't know what they don't know. And when you go in and tell a student that in 3 years, 4 years, you can be making over $70,000, we've got you a job here, or there's a number of other companies in the region that would hire you the day after you graduate. They just don't know that. The students don't know. The parents, to your point, the parents don't know about these opportunities. So I applaud Blue Cross and ETSU that they are doing a very intentional recruitment of students into these career opportunities that will make a huge impact, not just in their workforce needs, but just in building up partnerships between post-secondary and high school. And I think that's also something that's missing a lot of times, that you've got communities that work really well with their post-secondary institution. It's seamless, either in dual enrollment or getting certifications, micro-credentials. And then you've got some that the high school students couldn't tell you what the post-secondary institutions in their region were, especially rural students that have to commute to get to a post-secondary institution. I've got 18-year-old twins that are about to graduate in a couple of weeks, and they took the maximum load. They actually took more in dual enrollment, but they did all online, because the nearest post-secondary institution was an hour and 20 minutes away. But honestly, if I hadn't just known, being in the business myself and known the opportunities that were out there, they never would have done it. I mean, I pushed them to do that, but a lot of parents need more awareness to help support their kids in these opportunities. So the other program that I think was masterful that we did in Chattanooga about 4 or 5 years ago was Howard High School, which was one of the, at the time, one of the lower performing high schools in the district, and it has a high Latino population. And some of these students literally have come over, been in country for a month or less. And so we were trying to figure out how we could kill two birds with one stone. One, give them some workforce career opportunities after high school, and fill an actual workforce need, so that we're not talking about benevolent partnerships with companies. That's one thing that gets on my nerves sometimes, is a lot of companies feel like, well, we can cut a check, slide under the door, and we've done our part to support education. When in reality, we need connections that give opportunities to students in these high demand career paths like computer science, so that they have a job waiting for them when they finish training. So we took 15 or 16 Latino students, and we got an instructor from the TCAT that was bilingual, and spent 2 years, their junior, senior year, on an IT technician program through the TCAT. And they went the summer between their junior and senior year, and they completed the however many 1,200 or however many hours it is for to complete a credential to TCAT. And those students had a job waiting for them the day after they graduated, making $17.50 an hour. That was the minimum. It went up to some of them were bumping up around $30 an hour. And this is as a 18, 19-year-old student that might have been in the country 2 years, some of them a little longer, and some of them barely spoke English. But it was because of local partnerships where those industry partners said, we'll hire them. You train them, we'll hire them when they graduate. So that's something, I think we're talking about workforce development in computer science, is it's not just a K-12 issue. It's really a partnership issue, community partners and regional partners. And I just thought this was funny about computer science, because if you're not in the sector, you might not know what computer science really is. And it is, to your point, it's very nebulous. If you say computer science, I've talked to some parents about this, even some friends of mine whose kids are the same age, and I say, if you want them to have a job waiting on, if they're interested in computers at all or networking and things like that, computer science is the way to go. They think computer science is Microsoft Office. Like, oh yeah, my son can do PowerPoints and he can do that Excel and the Word. We got the Word. So again, the parental awareness helps a lot with this. All right. So does anybody know about the new computer science legislation that just enacted? So I am proud to say that the Tennessee Chamber was one of the first organizations to push this over a year ago, because we saw that. Honestly, putting my principal hat and district hat back on, if the high school's not offering a computer science course already, and they're going to have to do it because of this legislation, then somebody at that district needs to be whipped, honestly. This is the world we live in now, where we are enveloped by technology, to not give students the opportunity to take a computer science course just blows my mind. I didn't even realize that was an issue till it was brought up by some pretty significant partners. I don't know if you've heard of them or not, but Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Google, they came to the state of Tennessee and said, you know, we got a problem. We can't hire people either in-state or to work remotely. There's not enough workers. And Brandon, what'd you do to him, buddy? They said, we don't have enough workers. So and one of the things we found in doing research on the workforce landscape is that students don't have a clue, to your point, about what computer science careers are out there because they've never had a computer science course. And I'll admit, I've been out of the district for about 9 years now, and I thought, man, I just assumed we were evolving and iterating at the same pace technology was. So if you don't know, the legislation is going to require that all high school students by the graduating class of 25 have at least one computer science course, one graded term. And then also all middle school students have to take at least one graded term of a computer science course to introduce them to what that is. And then the state is going to have some funds for professional development and training teachers. If you don't have a computer science credential, you can get a micro credential through an online training that the state's going to offer. So there's a big push by the governor around computer science. So when you start mandating things and putting it in the Tennessee Code annotated, you know that we're getting serious about it. So I was happy to see that. This is some legislation we pushed at the chamber to make sure our students are just aware of those opportunities that are out there. All right, so we're going to get into some of the free resources. In particular, we're going to talk about the computer science course and the coding course Josh is. But is anyone familiar with Learning Blade or Tennessee CAPS? So these are two free resources the governor has funded for a few years now that any school in Tennessee can access for free. You don't have to have any kind of site license or anything. With Learning Blade, you do have to have a username and login, but Josh can talk to you about that. The CAPS Career Awareness Preparation System is a career exploration platform for K through 12. I'll talk briefly about it in a minute, but primarily I want you to hear from Josh about the new computer science course in coding that's going to help fill that mandate for computer science credit.
Cool. So about 4 years ago, I was in Arkansas with the governor, and they were the first state to mandate a computer science class in high school. And after they did that, jobs, industries started coming to Arkansas because their graduates were having the CS skills. So fast forward to today, and I'm not sure how this thing works. Where do you point it at? Where do you point it at? Towards you? Okay, yeah. So fast forward to today, this Governor Hutchinson in Arkansas actually came back to Learning Blade and said, 5 years ago you built a hack attack mission for us, which is inside of Learning Blade, a free resource for Tennessee. And that was about the careers and the technologies. I like to say students can't be what they can't see. Who's ever had a student say, when will I ever use this? Look around the room. Just raise your hand so other people could see that. Because this is actually my biggest epiphany in education. I was in the classroom and I thought, oh, well, that's an annoying question. When you build a bridge, when you build a house, let's move on to this awesome lab. Out of the classroom, I've met thousands of teachers, and now I realize every teacher above 5th grade gets that question. So this is a universal truth in school. Kids demand relevance. Are we giving it to them, right? So that's the point of TN CAPS and Learning Blade, is to provide that earlier career exploration. TN CAPS is kindergarten lessons all the way through 12th grade. Learning Blade is 5th through 9th grade standards lessons. But so the Arkansas governor came to Learning Blade this past year, and he said, we need to mandate middle school computer science coding. Can you help us? And what we did was we designed a 20-hour course, which is in Learning Blade, and it covers the basics of computing and hardware, algorithms, coding in Python using 4 different programs, code.org, Turtle, Pencil Code, there's another one, the App Lab, and I'm just blanking on the third one. Oh, Vex QR. So we're going to take teachers and students with lesson plans through Vex, through code.org, through Pencil Code, through the App Lab, and really give a well-rounded view of how coding relates. I recall someone said in the room about coding, I think kids think about coding the same way they're starting to think about math. When will I ever use this? You're telling me I got to take my high school coding class, but when am I going to use it? So we're trying to expand their understanding that you can be a designer. I have a friend in California actually making $450,000+ a year. He writes the stories for the games at Activision Blizzard, right? So when you think about your English language art skills, if you're doing Scratch Junior and moving the sprite around the screen, can you have the kids write the story of their sprite? In the thought bubbles, the sprite can be discussing and using ELA skills. Correct. So that's how you integrate coding in elementary, right? You don't need a coding teacher. You can just go to, you can learn some basic fundamental skills and then teach ELA. You could teach social studies by having your sprite introduce another sprite. A sprite is just the character, right? The turtle or your own GIF or GIF or whatever. But you could have that tell the other sprite about George Washington. Today I'm going to tell you about George Washington. Who is he? And you're writing into your code language arts and such. Anyway, so this 20-hour program is now available to you. We hope you'll check it out. The purpose is to provide a framework that's well-rounded. It is aligned to the CSTA standards for level 2, which is middle school. And these are the concepts it's going to cover, right? So basic concepts in programming, writing code for robots, creating an interactive program. They're actually going to game their turtles in pencil code to put the turtles back in the cage. They're going to do common business applications. We have a whole thing on spreadsheets. If I had more time, I'd tell you this longer story. I'll make it short. I was a geologist, and I used spreadsheets in the field. So when I taught science for 10 years, I said, well, I use spreadsheets, so I'm going to teach my students spreadsheets. And it always blew my mind why my middle schoolers had not yet been exposed to spreadsheets. It's such a fundamentally powerful program. So they left my class understanding it. But how do we get students to understand big data? Jared told you guys I was in D.C. as a fellow, and the person who sat next to me, Kristen Honey, was the White House big data specialist. And I was like, I had never heard of a big data person before. Big data is a career path. You can go to college now and get a degree in data science and graduate making lots of money. So we got to expose students to these opportunities. That's really the purpose of Learning Blade and T and CAPS is earlier exploration of these careers and awareness of the careers. Who's ever had a kid that said, I want to be a veterinarian? Raise your, please. We've all had that student. Do they all go on to be veterinarians? No, but that student at a young age is expressing, I like the environment. I like to help animals. Environmental scientist is another career. You could be a water quality specialist. You could work at a waste treatment plant and protect the river. You can do so many things besides being a veterinarian, but do we show students multiple ramps? So in Learning Blade, there's 100 careers and technologies. We have careers in mechatronics. My last little soliloquy here, in 10 years in middle school, not one time did I use the word community college. You can see I'm a little gray in the beard. I used to think of community college as, I had a pejorative view of it, right? The kids that couldn't make it. That's not what it is. When I was in DC, the Department of Energy spent $8 billion to fund community colleges to help students get into the energy workforce. And I said, oh, I get it now. Community college is the direct path to high demand, high wage STEM jobs, mechatronics, automotive, healthcare, energy, construction. We got to show kids that STEM doesn't mean PhD scientist, right? We're at a STEM conference. STEM means anybody with post-secondary credentials and skills can enter an amazing high-demand workforce. So TN CAPS is going to show students that as well. So both of these programs are really designed for that. This is what it looks like. Students log in, they click on one of these links up here. It takes them through the program. And so we're excited about that. We're excited to have that. Did everyone get the sheet? If you didn't, I'm going to come around. I've only got about 5 or 10 left. And the last thing is Jared talks about RFI. If you didn't sign in, I'm going to take these tonight, enter them into a little spreadsheet, and then I'm going to send you information on both programs.
So another program that was just funded by the governor is called Ready for Industry, and these are 20-hour courses in the highest demand career fields, and you can see here healthcare, manufacturing, information technology, construction, and logistics. So each one of these is a 20-hour course designed for 11th graders, 12th graders, and adults. So this does a deep dive into what it means to work in that career, what the expectations are, and here's some of the information technology, some of the bullets on the composition of the course. And for high school CTE folks, this is going to be a huge benefit, because again, this is free. All the resources we're talking about today are free, so this isn't a pitch from a vendor. This is already paid for by the state, and you can access all these free. And this will be ready. The Ready for Industry courses will be ready for this coming school year. Arkansas is also doing the Ready for Industry as well. But this, for those students that, to me, when a student does career exploration, it's not only a win if they find an interest and an affinity for a particular career, but if they find out, you know what, now that I know what this is about, I don't want to do computer science. That's good. That's a win too, so that these students don't spend time in training and money on education for a career path that they ultimately are not interested in. What time's this session over?
We're up in 1 minute.
Oh, I thought we were over at what time is it? I thought we were.
Do you have the session time in the back? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. So the other platform we were talking about was TN CAPS. It's career exploration for K through 12. It's got downloadable lesson plans that are already made for every grade level that do career exploration activities for Tennessee businesses specifically. So we've got over 180 companies right now across the state that partner with us on this program. And so students aren't just doing career exploration on a particular sector, they're doing it on specific Tennessee companies within that sector so that they can see what jobs are out there within commuting distance. So this session really wasn't about it, but we wanted to make sure we included it as another tool for you that's free within the state, that it's not just career exploration, it's career exploration for Tennessee companies. Yes, ma'am.
I'm in a rural district, and on the website it says that it's not available for our district yet. Is that coming?
It's every district should be on there. So if
There aren't any businesses linked to our.
okay, if you will go on there and email the info, it'll get to me, and I'll figure out what's going on there. But it should, every school district should be in there, and the businesses within that region, because we.
Which county or district are you in? DeKalb.
Yeah, because we've got them in. There's businesses partnering in every region. Well, thank y'all for joining us today. I'll swoop down to. Y'all didn't get to play the game today and get some peppermints from me. There you go. If you've got any questions, email Josh, and then feel free on the CAP side if you got questions. Email me.